Hello everybody, this is Bo3 back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today is a very exciting day. Hydra just ended, so Hydra class just ended as well. I am here on Tharamus. I did get a request on a kind of beginner guide to Hydra. I find that Hydra is extremely hard content for a lot of people, and it is something that I do fairly well. I don't do like the best in the world. I'm not doing like multiple billions of damage. You know, I don't have Trunda. I'm not going to go into the whole Hydra buff drama. It is a little bit less enjoyable. I will agree with that. But Hydra is still some of my favorite content, personally. I on this account was not part of the crazy trillion damage teams. So on this account, for me, when Corpulent Cadaver first got nerfed, I was just finally doing like 35 million to normal Hydra. So I wasn't even a part of that. So I've been manualing Hydra for probably the last year and a half or 2 years on this account, Tharamus. And I have gone through the ups and downs, but right now, even after the buffs to Hydra and all the changes and whatever, I am doing the most damage to Hydra I've ever done on this account, and I'm about to show you guys. Then I'll go over what some of my strategies for Hydra are, and like maybe some good champions to learn about it. We're definitely going to go over the Hydra head mechanics and what to look out for in champions to build good composition teams, right? So first, real quick, let me show you my clan. As you can notice, I do have the Hydra frame, so I have done over 650 million damage on this account with the first place, and I did it before this first place, which I'm very proud of my clan for doing. It's very difficult, especially when you're up against clans where one account could potentially do more damage than your entire clan and completely kick you out of the running for first through third place. So having said all that, I do want to just show you real quick. And my 3 keys here, we did over 1 billion damage, which is very good for my clan. It's the best in my clan, actually. It's close. These two are very close. This, if you guys follow my channel, know that this is one of my other accounts. And if you also follow the channel, Andaril is my best friend. One of my best friends. I have 2 best friends, but he's my best friend. He's a leader in our clan. We started the game together. We both learned together. And he is doing amazing. He almost broke 1 billion. He was so excited. I'm so excited for him. So I do want to shout out Andaril. You're my boy. Great job, dude. Keep up the good work, man. So these are my 3 teams. This is my... I think I did Nightmare here. So this is my Nightmare team. I did 131.94 million, which, like I said, not insane. I'm not doing like 1 billion damage here, right? But you can see what my team is. Sippy is in 9-piece protection. The Sun Wukong I really have to rebuild. This Sun Wukong is like over a year-old build. He's got an old style build where I didn't have as good a gear. So I do have to rebuild him. He does have the accuracy to do what he needs to do in this, which is steal the buffs and place block buffs, right? He's not a PvP Sun Wukong. He's not dealing tons of damage. He deals some damage. He is in Relentless, which is a solid set, so he can rotate back to those buff steals and block buff debuffs. We'll go over that a little bit more, but you can see Ninja, notoriously a stud in Hydra with his A2, the hail burn, the HP burn, triple hit, activation's insane. Krisk, if you've been around the game long enough, you'll know Krisk is one of the top provokers. Decreased speed is insane. So these are very good. Lady Mikage, very good with Ninja. Thor, very strong. So these are all very strong champions for Hydra. None of them are in insane builds. So this team is I did hard for this one. I am working on trying to get this to be a brutal team. It's kind of difficult because they're in kind of specific builds. This team does very well against hard. But one of the reasons I don't do brutal with this team, it's not that it can't do brutal, I choose not to do brutal with this team because it does so well against hard. As you can see, this team did 301 million damage to the hard Hydra. So I do this for the Hydra Clash, really. The Hydra Clash points, that's 600 million Hydra Clash points because you multiply it, right? So hard is times 2, brutal times 3, nightmare times 4. Very basic concept. You can see Taurus here doing tons of damage. Mishinaki doing tons of damage. So Elba is amazing. Emek's amazing. Wixwell's amazing, right? Andorok's amazing. I do have to kind of work on a build, though, for this Andorok. He is not in 9-piece protection. He's in a build for his second form, which is more of a kind of PvP wave-based form. So he's not really in a Hydra build. But I do have him kind of rotating back through both forms, just in case on the off chance that Mishinaki doesn't strip, he does come in with the strip and the block buffs debuff. So I have him rotating through both forms in this specific composition. He is the Sun Wukong essentially in this composition. So he is also very strong. I think the general consensus about Andorok in the community is that he's not good. I would have to disagree with that community. Maybe at the very, very top end, maybe like the 1%. And I'm not saying I don't want to see a buff for him. He's one of the only, maybe even the only mythic champion to have been nerfed for his enfeeble 2 bosses, right? Which I'm not saying I'm upset about. It's extremely overpowered. You know, so he's one of the few champions in the game that does enfeeble. There's less than a handful of them, so he's very strong in my opinion for PvE content. I think he's most notably known now since the Chimera release for being a 9-piece protection champion in the Chimera. He's excellent. I don't have him built for that. I have him built for this. So as you can see, this team works very well, and that's this composition. My normal team is my oldest team. This is the team that I kind of started Hydra with 2 years ago. They have not really been changed. All these other 2 teams are champions I acquired after this team and built from not this team. Like, so this team is, I started the game. I started this account with Artak. So a few years back when the Arbiter chase, or not chase, but like the Arbiter, I forget what it's called now. Let me know down in the comments below what that Arbiter series was called where we got Artak. So, and it was like a bunch of free righteous gear. As you can see, a bunch of free righteous gear, which is, you know, this is that beginning early team. So this is probably the team I'll go along with mostly. I won't be really showcasing Newt because he's not as accessible. Some of these champions aren't as accessible. Artak, Rathalos, Physics are essentially, they were essentially free champions. These were both login champions. Everybody gets Physics. I will be going over Physics. Physics is amazing. So I have her built in the Curse set and Immortal. If you're a little bit more endgame, your gear is a little better. Physics is very squishy for an ally protector. So I have her in Immortal just to keep her alive a little bit more. I think if you have a little bit better gear, you should put her in Perception or Feral gear just for the accuracy. But the Cursed is almost like a must on Physics for Hydra builds. She becomes a little baby like Nergante Archer Queen, right? So she's very strong. We'll go over her in a little bit. First, I want to show you guys the potential of the rewards you can achieve from Hydra Clash from doing tons of damage. So let me claim this real quick and show you guys what we get. So the Ornate Gilded Chest, we get a Primal Shard here. We get some orcs with speed. That's solid. Skinwalkers 5-star with speed, low speed. Still solid in a way. Stone skin accessory here for banner lords. Barbarians protection ring. Knights revenant HP. Stone skin amulet. And high elf stone skin defense with speed. It's not bad. These are all very strong rewards, some of the strongest in the game. The primal shard, very awesome. So having shown you that, we'll reset here. So now I want to, let me just claim some of these rewards real quick here. You can see some of these very, very good. Lots of clan coins, very important. Let's see, we get so the shards, the mortal soul shards, very cool. So all very good. We're really just looking for protection gear with speed on it. That's probably my favorite. Speed? No speed. That would have been sweet. Okay, so now that we've gone over that, let me show you guys real quick something. If you don't know, and you're maybe new to Hydra, something that's important is this boss guy. Unlike Demon Lord or Chimera, you're not fighting one boss. Yes, I understand Chimera changes its forms and the type of form is different, so you have to adjust and kind of figure out which form you're fighting at to do best with. But with Hydra, it's different. You're not fighting one boss, you're fighting 6 bosses, right? So you got to build a team that can handle at any given point 6 bosses. So you're only going to be fighting 4 at a time, maybe less if you're decapitating heads because you have strong damage dealers. But like, something that's important is to remember you're fighting 4 different bosses at once, but could potentially be encountering 6 different bosses because the heads change. Also, every month the affinities change, so it's hard to stay affinity friendly. It can be done though. So if you're looking to like quick battle, I don't suggest quick battling for new players. It's a lot harder. You really want a quick battle when you have a fine-tuned team, and when you quick battle, you're not learning the interactions to look out for, so it becomes harder to build a fine-tuned team if you're not actually playing or manualing. Now, there's a difference between full manual and manualing to when, like, if you're just, say you're on auto and you see that one of your champions gets eaten by a Hydra head, and then you can take it off auto manual to free the head and then put it back on auto. A lot of people do that. I did that for a long time. I do quick battle mostly now because my teams are more fine-tuned. My 2 main teams are fine-tuned. I'm still working on that earlier team, but it still does well. So I will show you guys here a team real quick. I'm not going to keep it, but I will show you guys a team here. Somebody who's so let me go over the boss guide first. Knowing what each boss does is going to be so important for your team composition, right? And how to counteract those mechanics, right? So filling the roles of the champions is important. But a lot of people don't know about this. If you just click, or people just don't like to read. Some people just don't like to read, which is why I'm making this video. You can just listen to me do it. So knowing the bosses are important. So the Head of Decay, it's very important here. The Head of Decay, his A1 is not as important, but what is important is this A2. This remove all debuffs from all heads and fills their turn meters. This is a very important ability and can really put you in a pinch. It can really bind you up if you don't take care of this ability properly. So this is a full cleanse with a 30% turn meter boost. That is very powerful. The other thing to worry about here is this Rotten Ward. This is a single target cleanse with a massive shield that's protected called Life Barrier. His passive is also important. Whenever an enemy champion is healed, destroy the max HP, decreases the damage taken by poison debuffs, decreases the damage all Hydra heads take from AoE attacks, and damage from skills that scale on enemy max HP is capped. Damage taken in 1 tick from HP burns debuff is also capped. Damage taken from Reflect and War Mastery and Giant Slayer is also capped. So all the heads are immune to stun, freeze, sleep, block active skills, block passive skills, fear, true feel, petrification, berserk, and enfeeble, thanks to Andorok, my boy, right? So that is the head of decay. Now, what it doesn't say in here, which is extremely important, is that this head can be provoked by the Provoke debuff. So head of decay, it's very important to know that, to bring a strong provoker. That's why I was talking about Vizix. Vizix, everybody gets Vizix. Just because she's a free champion doesn't mean she's not good. She got a buff a few years back. She's fantastic. She's an amazing champion in Hydra. We'll go over her actual kit, but she is a very good starting out provoker. I use her. She's incredibly good. So just because she's a free champion doesn't mean she's not very good. She is very good, and I highly recommend using Vizix. So okay, that's the head of decay. Provoke beats head of decay. So if you provoke the head of decay, the head of decay will only be able to use its A1, won't be able to cleanse, turn meter boost, won't be able to put the big shield with a single target. It's very important. Very, very important. All right, so the head of blight is the next one we'll go over. The A1's just putting out poisons and leeches. Decapitation effect inflicts damage to all heads under HP burn debuffs whenever this head is decapitated. So that's actually very important. HP burn is very strong against this head and all of the Hydra heads. But here we'll talk about why in a little bit more here as we go through this kit. Leeching blight attacks all enemies, places more poisons, instantly deals poison damage on champions that got the leech debuff. This is the biggest part of the head of blight's kit here, is the blinding smog. This is the ability that places the poison cloud, and it places poison cloud for 2 turns on all the heads, and this buff is protected, so it cannot be removed or transferred. This can be very difficult to deal with, but the way, if this goes off, but the way to deal with this is because it's a buff, it can be block buffed, right, by champions like Ugo or Sun Wukong or other champions that do block buffs, like Loki does block buffs. Loki's a little bit harder to deal with because of the RNG that is built into his kit. Just a lot of targeting, so if you're gonna do it manually, he's very good. If you're gonna do it on auto, it can be a little more difficult, just because the AI is not the brightest. The AI is not as smart as you are, so that's why I highly suggest manualing it and just keeping an eye on it until you have an extremely fine-tuned team that you're extremely confident in doing the auto quick battles. So also something here, and let me see if it does say this. Let me read the passive real quick. This head receives double damage from HP burns, decreases the damage all Hydra heads take from AoE attacks, kind of like the head of decay. Also is capped for damage on enemy max HP and burns, and reflect damage and War Master Giant Slayer. Also immune to all the same CC, the control debuffs and things like that. But what it doesn't say here, kind of like leads to it, but doesn't actually say it in the fine print, is that if the Hydra heads have HP burn on them, when this poison cloud goes off, the poison cloud effect will not actually work. And it might actually say it in the poison cloud buff like description. Let's see if we can we can't click on it here to go to it, but we will go to the poison cloud buff to read it in a little bit, not right now. But basically what poison cloud buff does is it prevents all debuffs from being placed, and it makes all attacks weak hits, so it makes it very hard to place your debuffs to deal any kind of damage, and this can be very difficult to deal with when it's with the other heads doing their mechanics. You can get pinched very easily. Like, for example, real quick, the speeds of the head of decay and the head of blight are very similar. So what'll happen is if you don't provoke the head of decay, what'll happen is you'll place your buffs, like your important buffs like decreased defense, weaken, decreased speed, things like that, your HP burns, right? Then the head of decay will cleanse everything that you just placed, and then the head of blight will do his blinding smog and place all the poison cloud, and now you're in trouble. You know what I'm saying? That happens very often, and you might even recognize what I'm saying if you're struggling in this type of content. So that's the head of blight. Now we'll go on to the head of suffering. So the head of suffering, the A1, will just place weaken, will not place weaken, debuff on enemies with strengthen. Can be important, not crazy important, but can be important to help you survive through some of the other heads that are dealing damage to you. The decapitation effect is places a shield buff on all enemies. Enemy champions for 2 turns equal to 30% of their max HP whenever the head is decapitated. So when you decapitate this head, all of your team gets shielded, which is pretty cool actually. So the A2 and the A3 are important here. So the A2 is places ally protection big version on all heads except this one, and will place the reflect damage buff on this champion for 2 turns, and also will provoke for 1 turn the enemy with the highest crit damage, right? So this can be detrimental to your nukers, right? So what'll happen is if you have well enough nukers, not only will they be provoked to attack it, and then the reflect damage will happen, like your nuker could kill itself. This can be very hard to deal with sometimes, but if you're paying attention, you know what to look for, that it won't be that big of a problem, but can be a problem in auto runs or quick battles, because your nukers will just die. They'll kill themselves essentially. So very important. The A3 is also very important, and it says attacks one enemy, places the pain link debuff for 3 turns, then grants an extra turn. This pain link can be it's not crazy hard to deal with, right? You just bring a cleanser, it's not protected or anything, but kind of like with the A2, if you have a serious nuker, you could accidentally deal a ton of damage to your own champion from the pain, right? But the most important part about this share suffering is this extra turn mechanic. This can pinch you hard when it goes to like eat one of your champions, especially in the later rounds when the mechanic, and we'll go over it more in depth in just a little bit, goes to a 2 turn, starts at 5, goes down to 2 turns. So really with this extra turn mechanic, you really only get 1 turn to free your champion. It can be very hard to deal with, especially for newer accounts just entering, or even some mid-game accounts that are kind of just getting into Hydra, because in my opinion, you are able to fight Hydra very early, and probably too early to where your account can actually deal with a lot of these mechanics. You probably don't have all the legendary champions to deal with all the mechanics here in the early mid game, right? So some of them are very specific champions, very specific buffs and debuffs, so it can be very hard to deal with. So that extra turn mechanic from the head of suffering is definitely something to look out for. This is probably the hardest part of its kit to deal with. It's passive. Increases the resistance of all Hydra heads by 50. So when this Hydra head is out, your ability to debuff the heads becomes more difficult. So you're going to need more accuracy because of that. So you just got to make sure that your accuracy is high enough to deal with the heads based on the level of difficulty you are fighting. It's going to be less for normal, a little bit harder for hard, more difficult for brutal, and the hardest for nightmare, right? So so decrease the damage all Hydra heads take from AoE attacks by 30%. This one is the highest version of this. Like the first 2 I read said 10%, this one is 30%. So AoE attacks when this head is out are reduced substantially. And then decrease the damage taken by poison debuffs by 90%. So poisons really aren't that strong in Hydra. Just saying it out there. And damage, just like the rest of them, damage from enemy max HP is capped. HP burns is capped, reflect damage, War Master, Giant Slayer, all capped. Now it doesn't, when I say it's capped, it not saying that you can't deal a substantial amount of damage. You can. It's just capped, so it's not insanely overpowered. It's just something that is part of Hydra. And same with the control effects. It is immune to them. So, alright, so the next one, the Head of Wrath. This one is also important. This one is kind of like the nuker damage dealer head. So this one is something to look out for. This is the one that you need strong survivability for. So let me go over its kit real quick. Attacks all enemies and places decreased attack, so you're going to deal less damage. Its passive effect is each hit receives increases the vengeance counter by 1. So there will be a passive counter on this head when it reaches a certain point. I believe it's 15 stacks. This effect will happen. When vengeance counter reaches 15, places a vengeance buff, a block debuffs buff, and a 15% reflect damage buff on this head for 1 turn, then attacks all enemies. So this is important because attacks like multi-hit attacks will increase this vengeance counter a lot faster. So it can be kind of tough to deal with and navigate through. Enemies like Newt, who are extremely good, right? But they have 2 triple hitters, will increase this substantially. So you're going to deal with that vengeance counter, a vengeance buff, and that reflect damage a lot sooner and more often. So just like the Head of Suffering, the reflect damage, your champions could essentially kill themselves, and that can be detrimental. It can be very hard to deal with. Also, this vengeance buff, and we'll go over it when we go over the other buffs when we get to the buff and debuff section. But this vengeance buff, I'll say it right now, it increases its damage by 300%, which is a substantial amount. So this head is known to kind of nuke your team, and it can be hard to deal with for, like I said, early and mid game champions or accounts that don't have great gear for survivability or the champions to do it. So let's read its decapitation effect. Inflicts damage to all heads whenever this head is decapitated. This head is decapitated while under a vengeance buff. The damage inflicted to all heads increases, and there is a 25% chance of placing leech on all the heads. So this is actually really good because it'll damage its own Hydra heads, which is cool. So it's a 3, attacks all enemies and places Provoke. So, and also increase attack, 50% increased attack. So the Provoke, like the Head of Suffering, while it's got the reflect damage on, can be detrimental to your team and your nukers, specifically your nukers. They'll kill themselves, like I've said before. Okay, so the passive is pretty much the same as the other few. Decrease the damage all Hydra heads take from AoE attacks by 10%. Damage capped from the enemy max HP, HP burns, reflect damage, War Master, Giant Slayer. Also immune to the control debuffs. Alright, so the Head of Torment. This one is a doozy, and a lot of people struggle with this one. But in credit to Plarium, they have kind of, in a not specific way, have kind of made it a little bit more easy by giving, in the early path, I think it's like a $15 thing. So if you're completely free to play, this doesn't help you at all. But if you're low spend in the early game, you can get Rector Draft for a few bucks, right? And I'm not saying it's worth it. I'm just saying it's available. I personally wouldn't do it, but that's because I'm an experienced player. I'm not like a complete vet. I haven't been playing for 6 years, but I am a more experienced player. And I understand the mechanics very well, so I probably wouldn't spend the $15 there. It's not worth it for me. But if you maybe are lacking that champion, and I'll tell you why in just a minute here when we read the kit, it could be worth it for you. So the A1 for the Head of Torment is attacks one enemy, has 50% chance of placing fear debuff that can't be resisted or blocked. After the first attack, attacks all enemies, fear or true fear debuffs, right? So fear and true fear are frustrating to deal with because they'll make you miss your turn, and true fear will have your, not only will you miss your turn, but your ability will get put on cooldown like you used it but you didn't. So that can be frustrating, can be very hard to deal with. Whenever this head is decapitated, removes all fear and true fear debuffs from all enemies, and places perfect veil for 2 turns. So basically, when you kill this head, you decapitate this head, all the fear and true fear that it had been placed on your team will get removed, and you'll get the perfect veil. Perfect veil is a great buff. It reduces AoE damage, and you can't be targeted by single target attacks. So very important buff. We'll come back to the perfect veil. The A2 attacks all enemies. Damage increased by 25% for each debuff an enemy is under. Just a damage ability. And his passive is, when attacked by enemies not under perfect veil buffs, place a true fear buff on them for 1 turn. Can't be blocked or resisted. Now this is the most important part about this this head, and can be the most frustrating head in my opinion to deal with if you don't have the perfect veil. And that's what Rector Draft does. Rector Draft places perfect veil, does the healing, does the revive. That's why she's an excellent beginning champion for this specific role and this specific mechanic. So if your champions are under the perfect veil, they will not get this true fear. Okay, so now there's a couple ways to deal with this. If you don't have perfect veil, you can just run a cleansing champion and just don't have them attack the head of torment, right? So when your other champions do get the fear, it can cleanse them. It's not the best way to deal with it. Perfect veil is the best way to deal with it, but you can kind of work around it in a manual way like that if you don't have a perfect veil champion, or you know what I'm saying, you just, pardon me, you didn't want to get the Rector Draft early, you didn't pull it in an ancient shard or whichever shard, right? So you could do it that way as well. And its passive is the same as the others. Damage from poisons is decreased by 90% on it. Decreases the damage all Hydra heads take from AoE attacks by 10%. The damage cap for enemy max HP abilities, HP burns, reflect damage, War Master, Giant Slayer. Immune to the control abilities. Alright, Head of Mischief. This one is also a doozy, and probably in the debate for one of the most frustrating heads to deal with as well. But there are a couple ways to deal with this head with specific champions. Let me go over his kit real quick. Alright, Thieving Jaws. Attacks the enemy with the most buffs, steals all the buffs from that target, and steals 50% of their turn meter. If there are multiple enemies with the same number of buffs, this attack will target one of them randomly, and will ignore Veil and Perfect Veil. When decapitated, decreases the turn meter of all Hydra heads by 100% whenever it's decapitated. Right, so this is actually very important. And let me go over the A2 real quick, and we'll just talk about it as a whole. Actually, I'll go over the passive real quick. We'll go over it as a whole together. Spoils of Mischief is the A2. Applies a buff spread effect, taking all buffs from the head and placing them on all heads. Changes the duration of all spread buffs to 2 turns. So that's tough to deal with. The Almighty passive is, the Almighty Mischief passive says, has a 75% chance of redirecting any enemy attack onto other random heads, but will not occur if this head is under Hex debuff. So all three of these abilities on this specific head synergize extremely well. So you have to kind of take care of this head properly, or this head will just destroy your run straight up. Now, the A1 that steals the buffs, and if you're struggling with Hydra, you may notice what I'm saying real quick. It'll steal the buffs, and then it'll spread the buffs, right? So, and it's taking all the buffs from the champion with the most buffs. So that's very hard to deal with. And then the fact that it's redirecting the damage, 75% chance to redirect, it can be very hard to target that head and deal damage to it. So when it goes to eat your champion, you're gonna have trouble freeing it because you're not actually attacking it. It's gonna redirect it. So that's very hard to deal with. There are 2 really good ways to deal with the Head of Mischief, and we'll go over one of the ways a little bit later, and that is called Mischief Tanking. So a lot of people who are new to the game don't understand Mischief Tanking. It's kind of a hard concept to do, but can be done, and we'll go over it in a little bit. But the best way to deal with the Head of Mischief is to just bring a Hex champion, or farm, I believe it's Ice Golem, and you can get what's called Cursed Gear. And Cursed Gear gives you the chance to also place Hex debuff. And that's one of my favorite builds for Vizix, which, if you remember earlier on, I was talking about that very briefly. Vizix is probably one of the best cursed artifact set champions in the game. In my opinion, she works very well in that. So if you don't have a specific champion that does Hex, I suggest Vizix. If you haven't gotten Vizix yet because you're still less than 270 days, I would just farm Ice Golem and get yourself 4 good pieces of Cursed Gear. And when I say good pieces, I mean pieces that have accuracy and speed substats on them. Or if it's a chess piece, accuracy main stat with speed substat. Because you want the accuracy so you can have a better chance of applying the curse, and you want the speed so you're fast enough to be competitive with the Hydra heads, right? So you want to be a certain speed. You don't want to be very slow, because then the Hydra heads will go faster than you. They'll just demolish you with their immense mechanics, really. So you want accuracy and speed on your Cursed Gear, and if you happen to get purple or legendary gear, not just the blue gear, you're also looking for survivability substats like HP percent or defense percent. Okay, so that's the main way to deal with it. We'll go over mischief tanking a little bit. The same passives as the others, so immune to the control debuffs, and the damage reduced from AoE attacks by 10%, and also the damage capped for enemy max HP burns, reflect damage, War Master, Giant Slayer. Okay, so I'm not going to read all of this here, but if you do click on the boss guide, you can read it here for yourself. This is how it works section. I'm not going to read this because I'm just going to go over it for you, and kind of already did go over it for you a little bit in my explanations. So this is going to be kind of repetitive, but if you want to just have a little bit better of an understanding, I highly suggest reading this and reading it more than once, because it is a lot of just stuff to take in, right? It's, like I said earlier, it's not one boss you're fighting, it's technically 6 bosses that you're fighting, because what happens when you decapitate a head, and here's a picture real quick of a decapitated head. These 2 right here are decapitated, and these 2 right here are still alive, right? They're not dead. When they're decapitated, they are on a counter. So after the counter is finished, one of the heads that's not up will come out. So it could be one that you didn't start with. So technically you are fighting like all 6 heads. So you want to have a team that can counter all 6 heads. And we're going to go over that right about now. First, we'll go over some of those buffs and debuffs real quick, and then we'll go over champions that I think are really good for that. So let's go into champion buffs and debuffs. If you don't know how to do this, if you click on any one of your champion skills here, and let's go to this one here, and real quick right here, when you see the more info, you can click on this, right, and this will bring you to all the buffs and debuffs. So let's go over some of the more Hydra specific ones, and then I'll also recommend to you some of the buffs and debuffs that I think are very good in Hydra that you may or may not want to use. Alright, so let's go over... So first, let's go over what decapitated actually is. So decapitated, when you are able to finally defeat one of the Hydra heads, it will become decapitated. Increases damage taken by the head that was cut off by 200%. So basically you're just doing 200% more damage, right? So you're going to do more damage to that head. It is active for as long as the head is dead, quote unquote. Decapitated buff cannot be removed. Its duration cannot be increased or decreased. All right, so that's what decapitated is. Let's go down to life barrier here. So life barrier is a buff that grants the recipient additional HP beyond their max HP. It can't be removed, stolen, or has its duration increased or decreased. Skills that scale damage based on the shield's value will count the life barrier buff as a shield. Life Barrier has the highest priority of any buff and will be placed on top of effects such as digestion. In order to remove effects such as digestion, the Life Barrier must first be removed by damage. The Life Barrier is not removed when its duration ends. The Hydra head's HP will be fully restored. Removing the Life Barrier will place stun debuff on the Hydra head for 1 turn. So this is very important. It's basically like a massive protected shield. And if you break the Life Barrier shield, that Hydra head will be stunned. So this can be really cool on the Head of Decay, the one that you'd like Provoke on, because sometimes if your Provoke, say, is on cooldown, but they got it Life Barriered itself, you can break the Life Barrier just before it's going to do the cleanse, and it'll be stunned and missed its turn for the cleanse, and maybe you'll have your Provoke available for the next turn, and then it won't do its cleanse again because you've now provoked it after it's stunned from destroying the Life Barrier. So that's actually really cool. It's also very good on other Hydra heads. For example, on the Head of Suffering, if it's about to, maybe you potentially are recognizing that it's going to be the head to eat your champion, you can stun it just before its extra mechanic or extra turn mechanic, and it won't do its extra turn mechanic right away. So life barrier, very important actually. You kind of do want that one to go off sometimes. It can be harder to deal with in the more difficult Hydra difficulties, but it's just something to look out for, because maybe there is that opportune time where you have the Life Barrier up and you're able to destroy it to get that stun off, which is very cool. So here's Poison Cloud. So Poison Cloud buff blocks damage from poison debuffs. Also, enemies can only land weak hits on the champion under the Poison Cloud. So this is tough. That means you can't place your debuffs. You're also not dealing really any damage, so you're kind of in a bad spot when the Poison Cloud comes out. If a champion receives an HP burn debuff before a Poison Cloud buff is applied, then the effect of Poison Cloud won't work, but the buff itself will not be removed. It's not affected by the spread buff and increased buff duration effects. So there you go. This is where the HP burns can be important. So yeah, so it kind of counteracts the Poison Cloud in a way. Alright, here's the Vengeance. Increases the damage inflicted by the Head of Wrath by 300%. It is activated automatically once the Head of Wrath receives 15 hits. The hits are shown on the Vengeance counter. The Head of Wrath deals increased damage twice, right after the buff was activated and on its next turn. This buff can't be removed, stolen, or spread. Also, its duration can't be increased or decreased, so it is protected. So it's basically just a massive like increased attack buff. Alright, so we'll go over Serpent's Will in a second here. Let's go over Pain Link real quick. I want to go over Serpent's Will because we didn't go over that in the actual Hydra boss guide. It is, I think, in the how it works section, but we skipped that, so we're going to go over it right here in the buff section. So Pain Link is a lot, it's a big one, but let me read it for you real quick. The Pain Link debuff causes the affected champion to receive a percentage of all damage received by the enemy who placed this debuff. The enemy receives 100% of the damage inflicted. So basically, if you're attacking the Head of Suffering, I believe it is, then if the Pain Link is out, say on one of your champions, when you attack that Head of Suffering, your champion will actually take the damage. So it can be tough to deal with in a way. You could potentially kill your own champion if you have a nuker that's doing a lot of damage. So the amount of damage received depends on the enemy who placed the debuff. If it was the Head of Suffering, then the Pain Link debuff caused the affected champion to receive 15% of all damage received by the Head of Suffering. So it's not like a crazy amount of damage, but it can be enough. Say the Head of Wrath came in with a big hit from its Vengeance, and then the Head of Suffering does the Pain Link. You go in and attack. Your champion was already damaged. You could potentially kill your champion. So it can be kind of tough to deal with sometimes. It's not crazy. It's not the worst mechanic, but it's one of those little frustrating, tedious ones. Okay. If it was placed by an enemy champion, the percentage of damage received will be specified in that champion's skill description. So there is a mythical champion that also places Pain Link. What's his name? It's the Ogre. It's the Ogren tribe one. Let Let me know down in the comments below. I'm spacing his name right now. Oh well, we'll go on, we'll carry on. But yeah, it's because a mythic champion has this ability, and that's why. All right, so let's go over Serpent's Will real quick. The Serpent's Will buff reduces all damage a new head takes by 100%. And this is one of the things they changed in the most recent Hydra change, the most recent Hydra buff. This used to be a 75% chance, but we're not going to go into it. It's now a 100% chance. If this, when a Hydra is decapitated and the turn count is done and it comes back as a brand new head, it will be protected by the Serpent's Will buff. So you won't be able to deal any damage to it. And that's another reason why I also, in the beginning, suggest manualing it, because the AI is not the brightest and sometimes will attack the Serpent's Willed Hydra head. They have kind of been working on it, I believe. I think they have been trying to upgrade it so that the AI is a little smarter, but it's not perfect, and I've recognized it still does it. So personally, if you are struggling with Hydra, just manual it. That way you're kind of min-maxing your damage. You're going to optimally do more damage in a manual run. It can take a long time, but you have a whole week to do it. So it's really not that bad, in my opinion, personally. If you're super mega busy, I can see a argument for that. Honestly, I'm super mega busy all the time. So, and I still get it done on 9 accounts. So it's, I don't do it on all 9 accounts optimally, but I still get it done. So, I mean, it's not terrible. It's not the best. I'm not saying it's the best, so don't hate me for that, but it's not terrible. Most people run 1 account. You have 7 days to do 1 run. You get 3 keys, but you only need to do 1 run as long as it's a really good run. So, and if you understand Hydra, you're going to get your 3 keys done. So this is really for people who don't quite understand Hydra, that are kind of newer to the game. I would suggest working on 1 team to start, not 3. That way you can really fine-tune a team that does really well, and then move on to a 2nd team and a 3rd team. But until you're kind of doing, I like to say in my clan, until you're doing like 75 to 100 million to normal damage, I would just stick with normal and not really try to progress into hard, unless you're really just trying to get the early chest. But if you're trying to do Hydra Clash points, I would just stick with hard until you can do between 75 and 100 million damage on normal, and really just learn the mechanics, learn how to fine-tune your team, and then just once you can do that, I would say move on to hard in the next difficulty. That way you have like a really good understanding of this game mode, because it's very hard, and we'll go over that a little bit more here. So the Serpent's Will, don't attack that head. You're not going to deal any damage to that head. All right, so let's see if there's any other ones here that are applied to Hydra. Okay, yeah, so these are the Hydra specific ones. So there's 3 of them, or there's 2 of them. Dual is for Chimera. So this is the Mark of the Hydra. This is the one where your champion will get eaten. It won't be digested, it won't like go away and be removed from the game quite yet, but we'll go over Mark of the Hydra right now. Marks 1 champion who will be affected by the Devour skill. That's when they go to eat. This effect can't be removed, and its duration can't be decreased. It can't be blocked or resisted, and it ignores Perfect Veil and Veil buffs. The Mark of the Hydra is placed irrespectively of the number of debuffs on this champion. If one champion has Taunt buff and another has the Mark of Hydra buff, the Devouring skill will ignore Taunt. That is another part of the Hydra buff that they changed. Taunt used to kind of be a prevent mechanic to the Mark of Hydra. They have now changed that. Now Taunt doesn't deal with it. So basically when the Mark of Hydra comes out, it's going to be a turn counter. In the beginning it starts at 20, and after 20 consecutive turns of your team and the Hydra heads, one of the Hydra heads will go in what's called Devour your champion, and then your champion will be in the Hydra, and it'll be like in a buff counter, and it starts at 5. So you'll have 5 of that specific head's turns to deal the damage. It'll be a green bar to deal enough damage to free your champion and bring it back into the fight. So that can be very difficult sometimes when all the effects of those Hydra heads are being activated, right? Like the ally protection or the life barrier, or if your head of mischief goes in and eats and you don't have the hex and it's redirecting your attacks at 75%, or like one of the heads do the devour skill from the mark of the Hydra. He didn't provoke the head of decay, and it cleanses all your debuffs and buffs, and then the head of blight goes in, puts the poison cloud out, and now you can't deal enough damage to free your champion, right? So what it's not telling you here is that mark of the Hydra, like debuff, has a turn counter, starts at 20 and it goes down and down, right? And once you're really far into the fight, probably around 750 total turns, that's one of the other things they changed in Hydra. It used to be at 1,500. Many people in the community at the very high end were saying that it was taking too long, and they were fussing and complaining about it. So they reduced the total turn limit to 1,000 turns. So about 750 turns now. You'll be at, if you make it that far, which I congratulate you if you do, that will go down to 2 turns. So they'll start eating real fast. And then after the first time you're in the devour, that counter will be 5 turns. Every time it goes to devour, after that, it'll reduce. So the next time will be 4, the next time will be 3, the next time will be 2, and 2 is the lowest it'll go. And when it's at 2 turns, it can be very hard to deal with some of the mechanics, and that's probably where a lot of people are struggling. And we'll go over some techniques on how to deal with that a little bit later in the video. So, for example, a scenario could be like you're at turn 2, right? And the head of suffering gets its extra turn mechanic available. You really don't have 2 turns, you only have 1 turn. And that can be very hard to deal with, like if the life barrier goes out, or some of the other examples that I just told you about. So you really need to be on top of that, and that's where sometimes the quick battle and the auto battle and the AI aren't that keen about. You know what I'm saying? That's where the manual really comes in. You really can pay attention and kind of deal with those things, at least until your team is super fine-tuned. So let me go over real quick some of the buffs and debuffs that I believe are extremely important and highly recommend in these Hydra runs. So real quick, block debuffs is important, but can be hard to deal with if your champions don't have enough resistance, because the head of mischief will go in and steal it and then place the buff spread, so all the Hydra heads can get the block debuffs. This also goes along with block damage, right? Or unkillable, things like that. Not so much unkillable, more block damage, but then it becomes very hard to debuff your champions, almost as if the poison cloud came out. So if you're gonna bring block debuffs, make sure you have a way to either steal the buffs or place block buffs debuff, which is this one right here. That will prevent, this is probably the best way to deal with the Hydra head of mischief, because when it steals the buffs, it can't spread it, right? It won't get it itself if it has it, and if all the Hydra heads have this buff, it won't get your block debuffs, it won't get your block damage or things like that. So this buff, extremely important. Some of the top champions for that are like Sun Wukong and Ugo. There are other champions, I'll try to go over them as well. But yeah, so look out for block debuffs. I suggest bringing it, just be careful. And I highly suggest the block buffs. That can be a reason that a lot of people are failing, because some of the champions are hard to find with this. This is a very specific niche skill. Loki does have it. A lot of people who are newer have Loki because he was a very recent login champion. Sun Wukong was a login champion, but he was like over a year ago, so not as many new players have him. So very good. So any of the buffs are kind of in that situation where they're all very good to have, but you got to be careful. Maybe bring enough resistance on your champions, or just have the block buffs, maybe a champion that removes buffs, things like that. So decreased defense, decreased attack, decreased speed, all very good. Especially decreased defense for extra damage. I mean, at the big version, 60% extra damage, that is massively important, right? So that's going to help you hit those higher damage thresholds. If your speeds aren't terribly fast, like if you're having trouble and you're struggling to reach like 250, 275, 300 or better speeds, bringing a decreased speed can help you kind of mitigate those speeds for your champions and the Hydra head speeds, depending on your difficulty, right? So it is very important. Shout out to Ash. Ash loves this debuff. I do as well. So looking for decreased speed, that's why I say Vizix. Vizix also does decrease speed with her provokes, so she can be very good to bring in. I highly recommend Vizix. All right, so coming down. Weaken, also very important. For 25% extra damage, you stack that with your decreased defense, you're now doing 60 plus 25, 85% more damage, right? So that's gonna just bring your damage up significantly. There are other ways that are a little bit more advanced to increase your damage. I'll just talk about them real fast, but in the early game, mid game, you probably don't have these ways, but just in case you do, I will mention 9-piece protection, which you get protection from doing Hydra. 9-piece protection gives you extra damage per buff. I believe it's 5% extra damage per buff. So if you have a champion that gives 2 buffs everywhere in 9-piece protection, that's 10% more damage. So now instead of 85, you're now at 95. You're almost doing 200 or times 2 damage, right? So also, if you're in a clan that is able to do and compete in siege, you can bring 9-piece feral, which is basically the opposite of the protection. And for each debuff placed, you're dealing extra damage. So you can, it's basically damage multipliers, right? So that's how you min-max for those higher damage thresholds. Those 2 artifact sets are more advanced for kind of more advanced players, but just throw it out there just in case you have it. I would focus on decreased defense and weaken primarily in the earlier mid game. Okay, so here are the really 2 good ones, Perfect Veil and Perfect Veil. You're going to want to bring that for the head of Torment. Provoke, you're going to want to bring that for the head of Decay. Okay, so here's one that I look out for. So if the head of Mischief steals the counterattack and spreads it, this can be very hard to deal with. The Hydra heads will be doing a bunch of extra attacks, dealing a bunch of extra damage, can be hard to come back from. So be wary of the counterattack buff. Hex, very important for the head of Mischief. That takes away his passive for the 75% redirection of the attack, right? So want to bring a Hex champion or bring a champion with the curse gear to be applying the Hex. In reality, you kind of want one of each, just in case your Hex champion gets eaten by the Mark of Hydra, gets devoured by the Mark of Hydra. You have a kind of backup way to Hex that head of Mischief if it's the one to do the devouring, right? So that is a way that you could get pinched and could end your run early if you don't have it. So make sure you have a backup way to Hex. Could be a good tip for you guys as well. HP burn is very good. It can deal a lot of damage. So HP burn champions are known to do a lot of damage in Hydra, and it's because they deal kind of like an enemy max HP in a way. Even though it's capped, it's because it's such a long fight, it stacks up a lot. So HP burn, very important. Also, it counteracts the poison cloud mechanic, so keep an eye out for your HP burn champions. I think that's kind of what all I'll go over with right now. The one that I really also would say to bring is increased speed. Definitely bring increased speed. Let me find it over here. So it's a little, since the buff on Hydra, the way they changed the turn counter, it's not as important in the high end, but bringing increased speed and decreased speed in the early mid game is still very important. It's because your gear probably isn't fast enough to make your champions fast enough to be doing that kind of mid-max optimized damage over having the increased speed, decreased speed. So I think increased speed, decreased speed is still very good in the early mid game, and I highly recommend that as well. Obviously, increased attack is going to increase your damage. So if you bring increased attack for your attack-based champions, increased defense for survivability in your defense-based nukers, you'll be doing more damage that way with your decreased defense and weaken. So that's another way to kind of optimize your damage there. Same with increased crit rate, increased crit damage. These are a little bit harder to find on champions, but can also help you deal a little bit more damage. Shields for extra survivability as well, strengthen as well. So things like that can be good. So let's go over a couple champions that maybe you guys have that would be good for early teams. So let me go over some real quick here for you. I'm going to go into this kind of view. That way you guys have a better idea. So real quick, actually, this is the champion you get from Hydra once you get 100 of her fragments, Mithrala Lifebane. She is a phenomenal champion. She's phenomenal in Hydra. She is a Hex champion. So once you achieve her, you can utilize her, and she will help you significantly. So we're not going to talk about her in today's team, because if you're probably watching this, you probably don't have Mithrala quite yet. So let's go over some champions here that I have that have, let's start with block buffs, debuff. Okay, we'll start with the block buffs, debuff. If you don't know how to, you go here, hold on real quick. You go here into the filter, you go down to debuffs, and this is the block buffs debuff icon. You click this, and these are the ones that I have. So what it'll do is it will say all the champions that have it, even if it's a single hitter. What you're really looking for is AoE, but you can kind of get away with single target if you're manualing it, and you're just being really aware of what's going on, right? So one of the more common ones who are very good, I don't have her built because I ended up getting Sun Wukong, who kind of hard carried this idea. I also pulled Ugo very early, one of my very first epic champions, so this account is super blessed, really. But let's go back into this kind of look here. We'll start from the bottom, and we'll just go over if they are actually worth it or not real quick. These are just ones that I have. Let me actually go into show here, because I might have a few more. Look at that, have a few more. Okay, so let's go over Abyssal. He does it on the A1, and it's only a 15% chance. It is AoE, but it's only 15% chance, and it only goes up to 20-30%. This is a very low percentage, but he is a rare, so you could build him in Cursed and kind of do block buffs and Hex in very early maybe format. He's not going to be very consistent because it is only 30%. I do believe you can use, hold on, real quick, you can get an extra bit of, you can get 5% from the Hex Master, or from the Sniper Mastery as well. And I highly suggest Hex Master for a 30% chance increased duration, so those are important too. He's not my most recommended, but you could use him if he's maybe your only block buffs champion. Let's look at the next one here. Where does he do it here? This is single target. I don't recommend this guy. This is a 4-hitter at random. I don't recommend him. I don't recommend Muckstalker either, single target, but real quick side note, Muckstalker is pretty good for his sleep ability for Sand Devil if you're having trouble with that. So maybe I'll make a guide on that another time. So Thurgist, this is a single target and is 100%. So she could if she's your only one, you would just have to be very aware of single target when to place this. It is on a 3-turn cooldown when booked, so you could conceivably use her. I don't recommend this one. It's only a 25% chance when booked on a single target, not consistent at all. Mystic Hand, same deal, don't really recommend him. Honor Guard. This is the same as here, right? So he's using single target. This is on a more books and a 4-turn cooldown, but it is 100% on a single target. If he's your only one, I guess you could use him, but I don't really suggest using him. There are better champions. But like I said, if they're your only one, then go ahead and try it out. Harvester, single target, but once she's ascended, this becomes 100% chance, so same as what we just were talking about. Let's go over to the skeleton here. I don't recommend this one. Plus, he's part of the Mikage fusion, so I mean, you'll want to build him to a certain point, which I think is only level 40, but past that, I wouldn't build him. Luria. Now, Luria is interesting. If you have Luria, you could use her in the same way where you're kind of being very aware of what's going on. Just because it's a single target. It is on a 5-turn cooldown though, but she removes all buffs from that single target. So, and it's on 100% chance when booked. So you could use her. She's not high up on the list, but if she's your only champion that has it, she could maybe benefit you. Fennex, I highly recommend building Fennex. Maybe not specifically for this, but his A1 is insane, so this is probably one of the better epics in the game. If he's your only champion that does the block buffs, it is on an AoE, and it is on a 80%. With the sniper, it could be 85, so he could be pretty consistent. When he's fully booked, it's a 4-turn cooldown. He's not the best block buffer, but he could be useful in that case. He's well known for his A1 block revive in PvP. But if you're going to build him anyways, maybe you could build him for that if he's your only one. He also does a decreased speed, decreased defense on a single target, so he's a very good champion. Not the best Hydra champion, but still a very good champion, and I recommend building him. Alright, so now we're at Hope. Let's look at Hope. I don't recommend her for the same reasons as the other ones. It's not consistent single target. It's pretty bad. Ugo, if you're lucky enough to have an Ugo, this is probably one of the most recommended epic champions to build in the game. She has one of the most reliable block buffs and decreased defense on an AoE in the game. She's very tanky. She's got a ton of utility. She places Leech on the A1, which is heals. She has the heal and like semi-cleanse. If she's the last one alive, she'll do a revive. She's very, very good. So I highly recommend Ugo if you happen to have her. She is rare, so if you don't have her, don't feel bad. But if you happen to pull her after watching this, rejoice, because she is a top tier epic. She really is. So let's look at her. She is a single target on a 3-turn cooldown, and it's a place. So if you have her and she's your only one, you could utilize her. You're just gonna have to be pretty aware about it. Let's look at Grunch. Grunch's looks like it's on its A1. I don't recommend Grunch for the block buffs. It's not consistent. He takes a zillion books, so if you're early game, he could be hard to deal with. Let's look at Warcaster. Now, Warcaster is one of the champions. He's got the AoE. It's not very consistent. It's 75%. With Sniper, it's 80%. Or, 75, 80%. I'm sorry, I can't do math all of a sudden. So he could be solid if he's your only one. But you're going to have to be careful because he places block damage, which could be bad if it gets stolen from him and spread, or stolen from anybody on your team after he's placed it on your whole team. and then spread. So that could be tough to deal with if you're not aware of that. So not the most recommended, but if he's your only one, he could help you in some fashion. Now, Umbral Enchantress is very, very good. I highly recommend Umbral Enchantress. She has the AoE 100% block buffs on a 3-turn cooldown, very consistent. Also, she has the Provoke. The only thing with the Provoke is that she puts this block active skills that is protected, so she can't be removed. So you kind of have to pay attention and pick and choose which one you want to do properly at the right times. So just be aware of that. If you're gonna like auto it or quick battle it, I would maybe turn one off and use one instead of the other. But if you want to use her for both, just be very wary of that block active skills on her. Now, like I said, these are just the champions that I have. There are more. So if you're watching this video and you have one that you want to shout out in the comments below to help people out, go ahead and do that. Maybe one I missed. So we would all really appreciate that as well. Just go ahead and shout it out down in the comments below for me. We're not going to talk about Lydia because this is not for endgame. This is kind of an early beginner. This champion you get from beating faction wars, which is kind of an endgame thing. Lady Kimmy, if you're lucky enough to have pulled Lady Kimmy from an ancient shard or a sacred shard or a primal shard, which it'll be hit or miss if you have this champion, just because there's so many champions. It would be total RNG that you pulled this champion, but she can be good in Hydra for a number of reasons. She has the decreased speed everywhere. She also does decrease accuracy. The decreased turn meter won't really affect the Hydra, but the decreased speed is very solid. She also removes one random buff, so she has a little bit of buff removal, not a full strip, but a little bit. And if she does happen to remove a buff, she places the block buffs, so this could be useful. She also does turn meter fill and increase speed in the same move with increased accuracy. She is very good. She could be useful if you have her. Congratulations if you have her. Bells was a kind of guaranteed champion in one of the heroes paths for the latest Christmas holiday. So if you have him, congratulations. If you pulled him, congratulations. He's pretty rare, so I don't expect people to have him, but he is good for this role. He's an HP based champion. He doesn't do tons of damage, but he, for this role, is very good. He's very similar to Ugo in a way. His A1 places the decreased defense. His A2 steals a buff from a target, but if the target is under leech, he'll do it in a kind of AoE fashion, which leads me to his A3, which is the block buffs and leech. So this is actually the move you're looking to do. You'd start off with this one, and then you go in to do this one. So Bell's very good. I highly recommend him. If you have him, congratulations. He's very good. This one most people will have because he was a recent guaranteed champion for the free login with the Asgard Divide just a few months ago. Now Loki can be hard to do in the auto and the quick battles because his kit is very RNG with the select target. Because there's 6 champions on your team and 4 champion or enemy Hydra heads, the select target, the AI has 10 different targets, right? So the RNG to that can be very difficult. But if you are manualing it, or if you're savvy enough to auto it and turn it off real quick before it becomes his team, so you take his turn instead of the AI taking his turn, you can select the enemy head and do the block buffs to them and debuff spread it. So this can actually be very useful. I do recommend booking it, so it's the 100% chance. He also does perfect veil, so he kind of evades the head of torment. Loki is very good. He's hard to do the auto and quick with, but very, very, very good in a manual battle, and I highly recommend him, especially in the early game when I highly recommend manualing it and learning how to play against the Hydra to fine-tune your team. Loki, I highly recommend him. Most people will have him, so go ahead and use your Loki. The next champion, if you happen to have King Galkabar, congratulations. The community kind of underrates him in my opinion. This guy is a beast in Hydra. I had pulled him early. He was one of my first 5 legendary champions on this account, and he kind of hard carried me in the early Hydra teams. So this ability right here is extremely good. Now the block buffs is only on a 1-turn cooldown, but it's a full attack with when booked, it's 100% of removing all the buffs. So very Sun Wukong-y here. Sun Wukong does it the best, but he does do that, remove buffs, and then places the block buffs also. And now poisons don't do tons of damage in Hydra, but they can be some effect. They can have some effectiveness. It's just kind of like a little bonus, a little cherry on top. You know what I'm saying? So for each buff he removes, he replaces them with poisons. He's a very cool champion, and he's also very good because his A3 removes all debuffs. So he's got a full cleanse, and then for all the debuffs he removes, he places continuous heals, so he can cleanse and heal your team, and then places shields. He's very good. His passive is insane. Whenever an enemy under a poison debuff attacks an ally under a shield buff, instantly activates the poison and instantly activates the continuous heal. He's very good, very underrated. So if you're lucky enough to have him in the early mid game, he will be a stud on your Hydra team. So go ahead and use him. I'm not going to talk much about Tormund. He's a void legendary. If you've been playing the game for long enough to have Tormund, you probably already know all this information, but he's not really a block buffs champion. I do believe it's conditional with freeze. Let me look real quick. Yeah, so under freeze. Now, I have used Tormund in Hydra. He's not great in Hydra. The build I have him currently in is for my Hydra build. Because his A1 is an AoE, I have him in Cursed Gear. So he can be a off Hex champion. Also, he has a 80% chance. I have him in the mastery where he gets the extra % chance to place the Provoke. So I was using him to be an off Hexer and off Provoker in a way. He wasn't great. I'm not gonna stand here and tell you that that Tormund worked very well, but he did kind of work, and it's an interesting build. I'm actually in the process of I'm gonna rebuild him more for PvP. So I don't really recommend Tormund for this, but I did have to kind of shout him out because it is kind of funny actually. Sun Wukong, if you're lucky enough to have Sun Wukong, go ahead and use Sun Wukong. He is probably the best champion to do this. The only thing that maybe you would be conflicted about is if you want to use him for PvP. There are hybrid builds, but he is, in my opinion, he's S tier for this role of stealing buffs and placing the block buffs. And it is on a 2-turn, and it's for a 3-turn cooldown. So he's just amazing for that. I use him for one of my teams. I'm not going to talk about Lady Noelle. If you have Lady Noelle, congratulations. Hers is on her A1. It's very good. If you happen to have her for some lucky reason, then it would be the same as where you just, because it's single target, you need to just pay attention and do it where it needs to be. If you're extremely lucky enough to have Andorok, he's very much like Sun Wukong in his second form. I'm not going to go over his kit too terribly because he's a mythic champion. Not a lot of people have mythic champions. More so now than when they did come out, but they're so rare. But I will, if you happen to have him, you're lucky enough to have him, I will say that his A3 in his second form is extremely good for the block buffs and the strip of buffs. So those are the champions I have and have recommended and not recommended for the block buffs. Go ahead and comment down below for me if you think I'm missing one that you use. And all right, so now we're gonna go on to HP burn champions. Where's the HP burn right here? So let's see which ones we have here. So I'm not gonna go over too many of these ones, but I will go over her. She has the triple attack at random. This could be good. Barrakin does it on a single target, can be good. He's good for his ally attack. Barrakin, very strong. I highly recommend building Barrakin. Not necessarily for the HP burn, but just because he's an epic ally attacker, he's a stud. I'm not that familiar with some of these. I don't really recommend many of these. I think Achak is pretty good. Is it conditional? The HP burn is conditional, but if he's your only champion, then maybe you could use him. Honestly, if you have Skrank, I know he's a void epic, but if you have this guy is a champion. He's probably one of the best AoE HP burn epics in the game. One that I don't have here, or yes I do, here he is. Another one that a lot of people probably do have actually is Mordecai. Mordecai, I highly recommend Mordecai. He's got a great all enemies HP burn. He's also got a turn meter fill, so he's very good. Frenzy the Cackler also could be very good, and she also has the Provoke. She's got the HP burn with the Provoke, very strong. Geomancer can be very strong. He's got, his is on a single target, but he's still very good in Hydra. So yeah, for epic HP burners, I recommend Frenzy the Cackler, Mordecai, Geomancer, and Skrank. Does he have it on a AoE? He doesn't. I don't really recommend him. The legendary champions that I would recommend if you have them. Recently, everybody got Ninja. I highly recommend Ninja. Ninja is amazing in Hydra. He can be your HP burner. It's not super consistent, but he just does such an immense amount of damage. I highly recommend Ninja. If you were lucky enough to start with Artak, Artak is a stud in the early game for this account. Artak also helped carry my Hydra teams. He's still very good for early and mid-game accounts. I highly recommend him. Elder Scarag. He's not viewed very well in the community, but I love this guy. This guy is a beast. One of the reasons I love this guy is if they happen to have places extra hits for each buff or debuff on the target, right? Can place up to 3 extra hits. Places HP burn debuff for 2 turns and a true fear, which won't matter. If the attack places 3 extra hits, steals all the buffs from the target after the attack. So it places an extra hit for each buff, right? So if they have 3 buffs or debuffs and it's mixed match, you can do up to a 6-hitter single target, remove all their buffs, and the HP burn is a place effect, which will actually be placed through the poison cloud. So this guy is a stud, right? And decapitation counts as a debuff. So if, say, one of the heads is decapitated, that counts as 1 buff, and you just put out like your decreased defense and weaken. You go in with the 6-hitter, and it'll place all the HP burns regardless. The only thing they'll stop it is with block buffs if it stole it. It doesn't do it itself. Only the Head of Wrath does it, and it's on the I think it's when it gets its vengeance. So Elder Scarab is actually insane. He's very good in Hydra, low key. The only thing I'll say about Elder Scarab, if you're lucky enough to have him, is you turn this A3 off, because this is a PvP effect. He's also fairly good in PvP in the early and mid game. He's not like in the top tier. He can, with this, it can be hard to take the stone skin off, since stone skin is kind of everywhere. But if there isn't any stone skin, this ability in PvP is actually really good. So he's actually, these 2 abilities can be very good. Actually, we were going to talk about mischief tanking. Elder Scarab is a very good mischief tank. He's hard to build as a mischief tank because you also want accuracy on him. But if you can build him with enough resistance, like I have him right now in a hybrid build, but it's because I changed it to do a Cursed City thing. Typically, I have him in a resistance chestplate and a resistance banner, but you can build him to be a mischief tank with high resistance because his A1 gives either or increased speed or increased crit rate, and that will be. So what a mischief tank is a champion that always has one more buff than the rest of your champions, right? So he will typically have the increased crit rate, and which is a very rare buff to have. And what'll happen is the mischief head targets the champion with the most buffs. So if he's always the champion with the most buffs because of that increased crit rate, and he's got like 350 to 400, 500 resistance, he will never get his buff stolen. And that's essentially what a mischief tank is. And so he's actually a very good champion in Hydra, and very underrated, and almost nobody talks about him. Actually, if you look real quick, the community hates him, and they're wrong, because Elder Scarab is a beast. So how about that? Mishinaki. This is one of the best champions for Hydra in the game. If you're lucky enough to have Mishinaki, go ahead and use him. If you have two, go ahead and use two, because he's that good. So he does HP burn on the A1, which is single target, and it's not all the time, but his passive lets him come in with an ally attack for champions that are under Hex when they're attacked. So he's actually doing it more often than you think, and placing it more often than you think. He's not mainly an HP burn champion. He's a great off HP burn champion. So if you use like Ninja and him, you can actually have HP burn out like kind of everywhere. It's very strong. But what he's very good for is his A3 is a double hitter AoE. That the first hit removes all the buffs, and the second hit places the Hex. So very, very strong ability. His A2 is also an AoE, decreased defense, and also places decreased attack for enemies under Hex. So he's very, very strong. He's a very strong damage dealer. As you saw in the beginning of my video here, on my hard team, Mishinaki did almost 90 million damage by himself, which is kind of nuts. So he's very strong. I think I have him in 9-piece Slayer, which is a paid for equipment. So not everybody will be able to have him in the Slayer, but you could just build him in 6 pieces of Perception. You could build him in Feral. Let me know if you have Mishinaki down in the comments below and how you have him built, if it's not in 9-piece Slayer. So the next champion we'll go over with, this is a very good champion. You just have to be careful. If you're lucky enough to have Kyoku, you have to be careful. She is a block damage champion, so you don't want the Head of Mischief to steal that and kind of spread it. You could use her in the same way as Elder Scarab to be a mischief tank in that regard. So, but like I said, you have to have enough accuracy and have a high amount of resistance. So she's a little bit harder to build. Mischief tanks can generally be hard to build, but it is good to have. Her HP burn is conditional. So what happens is attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance, 100% chance when booked of placing 50% decreased attack. After attacking, has 80% chance of placing the HP burn debuff for 2 turns on all enemies that this skill did not place decreased attack on. So the way this works effectively is to have a decreased attack champion faster than her, kind of like just fast enough. So where the decreased attack, AoE decreased attack champion goes in first, AoE decreased attack, then Kyoku goes and does this move, and then she'll place her HP burn because the decreased attack did not go. So if you're lucky enough to have Kyoku, she could be your HP burn champion as well. Also, not many people are going to have him because he is your referral champion. So if you have 6 buddies or 6 of your own accounts that you played to level 50, I think it's 40 actually, but you got to get them to 50. The first 3 to 50. I'll show you real quick here. Mine. So you got to have the first 3 here to level 50 to unlock your next 3 here, and then those have to be level 40. As you can see, I've been slacking a little bit on some of my alt accounts, but yeah, all 6 of these are my accounts, so that's how I achieved Him. I'm still working on his skin, but we do have him. Hold on, we're gonna do that. So Chronum, if you're lucky enough to have Chronum, takes forever. You could use Chronum as well. We're not gonna really go over him because very few people have him. Okay, so what's next? Let's go over Provokers real quick. Let's include here. All right. So let's go over some Provokers down here. Let's look to see. So Gnarlhorn, I highly suggest Gnarlhorn if you don't have any Provokers. If he's your only Provoker, go ahead and use Gnarlhorn. Now, there's 2 reasons to build Gnarlhorn. Not for Hydra really specifically. Like I said, if he's your only Provoker, go ahead and build him to do that. But you're gonna want to build Gnarlhorn on a side note for Phantom Shogun. And it's because you build him with as high crit damage as possible, higher than all your nukers. That way, the Shogun will target your Gnarlhorn and nobody else. So go ahead and build your Gnarlhorn. I'll show you mine. He's right here. As you can see, I have him fully built. He is the cheese for Shogun. So a little bit off topic, but if he's your only champion that can provoke, go ahead and use him. Let me see what his is. Now, single target provoke can be useful because only one of the 6 heads can be provoked, and that's the Head of Decay. So a single target 100% when booked can be useful. It is on a 4-turn cooldown, so you're going to have to rotate through his skills very fast for it to actually be effective. You're really looking for a 3-turn cooldown, but if he's your only provoker, he could be useful. Let's see here. Same kind of deal, probably the same kind of deal for most of these rare champions. I don't suggest Elder, very low end % chance. Let's look at T-Rex. So T-Rex, I do recommend. He doesn't have the most consistent provoke, but he's actually very good. His A3 strengthen for 2 turns can be good. You just got to watch out for the counterattack from, like I said before, and it is on a 3-turn cooldown. He's very tanky. As you can see, community loves him. So if you have a T-Rex, go ahead and use him. This guy, these 2 are kind of new to the game, and some of these newer champions that are rare are pretty good actually. So let's look at his provoke. His provoke isn't the best provoke, so I don't know if I would really recommend him for the provoke ability, but he can you could put him in a cursed gear and have his AoE for Hex. He does place the strengthen on big version, which is pretty impressive. Does the shields. The community likes him. I don't think they really like him for Hydra. I wouldn't really recommend him to be provoker, but definitely this guy. If you happen to have Vogoth, I highly recommend Vogoth. He doesn't have the most consistent provoke, but he is very good. He can be your provoker. He can be your healer. He does, each hit has a 30% chance to increase the duration of a random debuff. He's very good. So go ahead and build your Vogoth if you have him. I'm not that familiar with Tarshan, so let's look here. I don't recommend Tarshan. I do recommend Giscard the Sigiled. If you have Giscard, Giscard can be good. He doesn't have the most consistent provoke, but if you build him, he's got the 50% chance here, 60, 75% chance. With the mastery Fearsome Presence, you could go up to 80% chance. There it is on the provoke. He's very good. He also does increased defense, increased attack. So I do recommend, if he's your only provoker, go ahead and use him. He'll be solid. I do highly recommend Seeker. Seeker is amazing. He's amazing in all content. If you build him real fast, you could be good in PvP with him. He's probably the best fill turn meter champion in the game, with increased attack, with the extra turn. So this is in the top like 3 best turn meter fill abilities, right up there with Necmotharan Arbiter. He's amazing for this. His Provoke is on the A1. It goes 25, 30, 40, 50% chance, but it's a double hitter. So he's also very tanky. It happens more often than it sounds on the paper here. But I highly recommend Seeker. He's a stud everywhere in the game. If you're not that far in the game and you have him as an epic, congratulations. Go ahead and build him. He's amazing. I'm not that familiar with Grimskin. He could be okay, similar in a way. If he's your only provoker, you could use him for that. He's not great. He's not that consistent. I think the majority of them are like that. Double hitter, 50% chance provoke, 60, 75, 80 with the fearsome presence. If Atur is your only provoker, you could build him for that. Won't be that consistent, but you could use him for that. Let's look at Kaiden's Provoke. I don't suggest building Kaiden for the Provoke, but I do suggest building Kaiden because he's good in Faction Wars. He does the AoE decrease attack. He's also got a random 2 revive. So he's very solid actually. If you have him, build him, but not for the Provoke, just for a great support champion in an epic. If you have Duke the Pierced or Duck the Pierced, I call him Duke the Pierced. If you have Duke the Pierced as your only provoking epic, I would go ahead and build him. He has the 75% chance to provoke, 80% chance with the place the Provoke debuff for 1 turn on the target enemy. Also, so he actually just placed it. It's 100%. So he's amazing for that. It's the chance is for the 2nd turn on the Provoke. Oh, just kidding. 75 chance of placing a Provoke debuff 1 turn on 2 random allies. Just kidding. That I can't read. I'm illiterate, guys. Just kidding. But this place is 100%. So go ahead and build him for your Provoker. He's actually amazing for that. Just be careful with the reflect damage buffs and the unkillable buffs. You don't want him to get those stolen from the Mischief Tank, and you don't want those buffs to be spread. But he can be a great Provoker. So go ahead and use him for your Provoker. Let's see what else he does. Decreased defense on AoE. So very good champion. Let's see what the community says in Hydra for him. 4.6, pretty good for an epic. He's a great champion. Go ahead and build Duke the Pierced. Let's see with Faralos. I don't recommend building him for the Provoke, but he's actually, on a side note, good for the heal reduction in Cursed City for one of the Amius, the Lunar Archon rotations. So he could be having some viability, but not for Provoker. Let's look at Andolf. I wouldn't recommend Andolf for Provoker. Husk. Now, Husk is interesting. I recommend building Husk. Not necessarily for his Provoke, because it's not very consistent, but he does have an AoE enemy max HP. Now, it is capped, but that doesn't necessarily mean that much. He, over time, will produce a ton of damage in Hydra, so you could build him for a damage dealer if you're lucky enough to have Husk. I highly recommend Husk. Missionary, he could be good for your Provoke. If this is your only Provoke, put him in Fearsome Presence. You'll get your 80% chance. This actually could be very good in Hydra because the Hydra HP is always going to be higher. So this could be good. You could potentially get the 100% Provoke here. I do recommend Missionary if he's your only Provoker. We already talked about Umbral Enchantress. Highly recommend her for your provoking. Duke, we already talked about. Husk, we talked about. If you're lucky enough to have Drexthar from competing in Tag Team Arena, he could be both your Provoker and your HP burner. So highly recommend Drexthar if he's kind of like your only for that. Taragi the Frog, I highly recommend. He's so good. Just got to be careful of the reflect damage. You just don't want the Mischief Tank stealing that and moving it around. He's very good. Highly recommend. Let's look at Burgengiri. I don't really recommend building him for the Provoke, but I do recommend him if you don't have Lady Annabelle or Nishak or any bombers. You could utilize Burgengiri against Bommel. His passive is a cheese for Bommel. When the bombs go off, he doesn't die, he heals. So I do recommend you guys for that. Little side note on that one. As you can see, I have Bogoth and Giscard and these guys built a little bit here. Now, if for legendary champions at day 270, you're gonna get Vizix. This is probably in the early game the most recommended legendary champion to start Hydra teams with is Vizix. She has the it's the place Provoke, so it'll always happen, and she puts shields out, and it's an AoE. So like you can see, I have her in the cursed gear, so she's my off curse or off hex kind of champion as well. She also does decrease speed, which is, like I said earlier, very important. I think she is fantastic. The only thing about her is she's a little bit squishy. She doesn't have a ton of HP, so you got to kind of build her with a bunch of HP and a bunch of defense. I'd like mine a little more tanky, to be honest. And I'd like her to have a little more accuracy. But this is how I have her built. I haven't changed her build since Pinpoint Feral came out. This is kind of an older build. In this build, I would change probably these two to Pinpoint or Feral. Probably Pinpoint for the extra speed. So yeah, that's how I would have her built. I'd change these to Pinpoint. I'd go 2 Pinpoint in the accessories and 1 Feral if I had the proper accessories for it. Which I probably do. I just have to rebuild the accessories. But yeah, that's how I'd have Vizix built. She's fantastic. If you happen to have Wixwell, Wixwell is the best Provoker in the game with his A1 against bosses. So you kind of have to manual it unless you're just in a really fine-tuned team. But Wixwell, highly recommend. Strategos Islan, he's got it on his A1. It's not the most consistent. He does do decreased speed and decrease the duration of all enemy buffs, so he's actually pretty good. He can be very good in as a mischief tank as well, because he places the counterattack. You're gonna have to build him with enough accuracy and a high enough resistance as well. I actually have him in, well, hold on, let's finish build. I took the helmet off to increase the speed of one of my other champions, but let's just go ahead and throw a helmet on him. That one's not great. This one is better. I'm going to put this one on. I have him in the 9-piece protection, which will also help with protection for mischief tanking. So to protect your buffs, you can just use 4. You don't have to use 9. You can also use 4 and 6 if you don't have all 9. But I also have him in lightning cage, which will also help with mischief tanking. Just a few little mischief tanking tips there for you. Islan is great for that. Not the most consistent provoker, but a great mischief tank. Freya, if you're lucky enough to have Freya, she's not the most consistent provoker, but she is a good off provoker. She's just a great champion for survivability in Hydra as well. Increased defense, big shields, full cleanse, turn meter fill. Her passive is insane. It'll prevent a death, give it an extra turn. Highly recommend Freya if you have her. The last champion I'll talk about here is Krisk. If you have a Krisk and you're watching this, congratulations. Most people who have Krisk already know all this information, so I'm not going to go over him too much, but his provoke is insane. He's also got the increased speed. His passive does the decrease defense. He does decrease speed on AoE. I have mine in cursed gear for that purpose. The same purpose as Vizix. Very similar champions. Vizix is maybe like a budget Krisk, budget archer queen. So Guys, if you have any champions that I missed for provoking, go ahead and let me know down in the comments below. I'd really appreciate it. So let's talk about real quick. We're pushing a 2-hour video here, so this is a very long one. Let me go over real quick what else here. Let's go over Perfect Veil Champion real fast. Veil and Perfect Veil. Just kidding, hold on. What happens? Let's just go over Perfect Veil. I think the most notable ones here are Rector Drath. As you can see, Rector Drath. If you happen to have Tatura Rhymehide, he can be good. If you have Elva Autumnborn, she's very good. Let's look at him real quick here. So this is conditional Perfect Veil. I don't really recommend anything conditional. I think Rector Drath is probably the best way to deal with that. And then Tatura and Elva. So Perfect Veil is a little bit harder to deal with. Once again, if you guys have any comments about Perfect Veil, let me know. I'm sure it'll help somebody out. Alright, so sadly we're pushing 2 hours here. I'm not going to give you guys a actual run, but just as a breakdown, that's kind of how Hydra works, and some suggestions on Hydra. Actually, real quick before we end, let's just build a team real quick. We'll go in, we'll build a team that I believe is good, and I'll do one quick battle for you guys on normal here. So let's build a team together. Also, that's what I was going to do real fast. Let's look at Hex Champions. That's the one I was going to look at real fast here. It's not real fast. We're looking at 2-hour video here, so hopefully people are watching. Will watch it long enough. So let's get into the Hex real fast. Debuffs for Hex. This is what Hex looks like. I think so. These champions are all good for the Hex. 4 times at random, she's not the best, but if this is your only Hex champion, she'll work just fine. Thylesia, it's in her passive. When attacking enemies under decreased defense, has a 50% chance of placing Hex. She does the AoE decreased defense. She's not the most consistent Hexer. She could work. Everybody will get Cleoptrix after like 300 days. So if you're still struggling with Hydra after that, go ahead and use your Cleoptrix. She has the AoE Hex here. If you're lucky enough to have Marinex, she can be good with AoE Hex and decreased defense. Akemtum is an epic champion that he's extremely good in Hydra for the Hex. He's just a great damage dealer in AoE for long-term fights. So Akemtum, go ahead and use him. He's a stud. We talked about Mishinaki. Scorid, if you're lucky enough to have Scorid, he was a past fusion. He's not like the best damage dealer, but he is a great Hexer. So go ahead and use him. And then we talked about Mithrala. After doing enough Hydra, you'll eventually get her. If she's your only Hex champion, go ahead and use her. So real quick, there you go. Okay, let's do one real fast for you guys here on normal. We'll build one together. Let's do it's kind of hard to say with this account, but just because a lot of the champions are so powerful. But let's go ahead and use yeah, all these are going to be a bad example because they're just so built. It wouldn't be a real beginner style, but yeah, so maybe I'll just show you guys my let me just show you guys my my hard team. This is one of my best teams, and that way I can just show you guys. I have it as a manual, but it doesn't need to be manualed. So I'll just show you, I'll tell you guys the roles. So we talked about Elva. She's a cleanser, a healer, a reviver, perfect Veil champion. Very good. Emic is my mischief tank. He's in 9-piece protection. He's in lightning cage, which counts as a buff. So he'll always have that lightning cage. Also, he has lightning cage too, but they're both very high resistance, so it's okay. But Emic is my main kind of mischief tank. Mishinaki, my hex champion, decreased defense. Andorok is my buffer, buff extension, and he's kind of rotating in and out for the block buffs and stripping. Mishinaki's also stripping. They're removing all the buffs when I say stripping. Taurus is damage. Mishinaki is damage. Taurus is also turn meter filling onto A1 and buff extension. I mean, this is kind of Kraken-y team. Wixwell, buff extension. He's placing intercept. He's doing buff extension. He's doing my provokes. Yeah, so that's the... I'll just show you the roles. I won't do the fights, but those are the roles for that one. For my Nightmare and Brutal team, this is that one. So Lady Mikage stays in her first form if you're lucky enough to have her. Buff extension, ally attack, buffing, bringing in Ninja. Ninja's doing HP burns and tons of damage, decreased defense in the A1. Sippy is doing her buff. She's in 9-piece protection, so it's a lot of protection. I'm not terribly worried about the Head of Mischief with all the protected buffs I have out. She's doing turn meter fill, reviving. Thor, he's doing tons of damage, decreased speed. She's also doing increased speed. Like I was saying, Sun Wukong, I use him on my main team. If you're lucky enough to have him, go ahead and use him because he's a stud. He'll just set you up very nicely by taking away and removing all the buffs, placing the block buffs, and that'll pretty much take care of them. And Chris is my provoker. He's doing a lot of decreased defense and hex and things like that. So that's that team. This is the more relatable team. Ugo for like a partial cleanse, heal. She's doing the decreased defense and block buffs. Physics doing the hex and the provokes, decreased speed, very good. Artak, Andoril actually, who I was talking about before, he came up with the Artakelos. This is a very good combination. So Artak's doing all the HP burn activation. Rathalos doing damage, extra damage on HP burns. So he's just a damage champion. Newt is kind of mischief tanking in this one with his counterattack. I have him in a high resistance build, and he's doing enemy max HP damage. So he's doing a lot of single target damage to kind of free champions. And Pythion is my reviver, healer, cleanser. So this team is not so. Some of these two champions are hard to come by, but these 4 champions are a little bit easier to come by. These were 2 free login champions. Everybody gets physics. Ugo is an epic, so it's kind of hit or miss. But those are the teams I use. We're pushing 2 hours here. This is my longest video, so there we go. So I hope you all enjoyed. I'm gonna end it here. I hope this helped in some way. Let me know in the comments down below if it helps in any fashion. Let me know if you have any input. Maybe I missed something that's important. Go ahead and let me know. And if you guys like this type of content, like and subscribe to me, please. It really helps me out. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.